pronunciation the first time happened.
Who knows why?
Yes, there's a secret there. Sensory City, that's the title of the presentation. Let's see what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about smart cities, really. And I noticed that there are a lot of people here that are against smart city, and we are also against smart cities. But, so let me give you the background. So not a Bell Labs. Bell Labs is a sort of old, very sort of well-known in electrical engineering, computer science, in terms of laboratories. If you use Unix, Unix was invented in Bell Labs. If you use some transistors, it was invented there. And now we're trying to think about the future, right? And we think about the future in alternative ways. And if you look at the industry, and you look about you look at the smart city agenda, it usually follows this kind of interesting pattern. And that is, so if you live in a smart city, you're always going to go to work and you're going to be on time. When you go shopping, there is no queue. And you know what? You're going to feel really, really, really safe because of the CCTV cameras around you. So it's about safety, efficiency, not losing much time. That's the idea behind smart city. But really, I mean, actually, people do choose their cities based on this safety. Well, I mean, it's important to feel safe. But also, there are intangible properties when we choose where to live, if we can choose where to live. And those properties of safety and convenience make a city acceptable, but they don't make it great, right? So how do we go from acceptable to great? Well, we're trying actually to foster global networks of crazy people like us. So we look at Rosanna, we open up a new website where you can go, goodcitylife.org. There are some beautiful maps, but the idea is that we're putting together people who actually want to do research that is totally orthogonal to the smart city agenda. So that's the only constraint. Then you can do all sorts of things that you want, right? And in terms of us, what are we doing apart from putting together people? Let me tell you about some work that we've been doing recently, actually in the last 3 years. Most of our work is about not being very innovative, because it's about replicating social science experiments from the 70s by these eminent guys, Stanley Milgram, Kevin Lynch, Jen Jacobs, trying to repeat those experiments, but with technologies, right? And if you look at a few examples, for example, urban beauty, right? How would you design for urban beauty? Well, first of all, you need to understand what is urban beauty and what is beauty, and if you ever could possibly grasp that. Right, so have you watched the social networking movie? Let's start the brainstorming session. No. Who watched the social networking movie? Hands up, they're not going to see you, don't worry. All right, cool. So a few, okay. So, well, just a few, okay. The social networking movie is about how Facebook started. And the people who watched it, they know how it started, right? It started with Face Mash, unfortunately. So the game was like, you had at the Harvard campus, you had to compare 2 pairs of pictures of females, unfortunately, students on campus, and then and then people had to vote left or right, and then you had hottest on campus. Right, so pairwise comparison, and then you have the autos on campus. But since we didn't want to do that, we did a face match, but for cities. So the same idea. So you do pairwise comparison. You ask people which one is more beautiful, which one do you think is quieter, or which one makes you happier, and then based on left and right, then we can do a top K, right, most beautiful. So you can quantify beauty in this way, right? So we built the game. We started to see whether we could do that. So this game is under urbanjobs.org, and you can go there, and you can say, you can basically play the game is 1 minute or 2 minutes max. You say which one is more beautiful, left or right, and then you get sort of recommendation on hidden gems inside the city of London if you were to live there. Then, as a consequence of that, these experiments and thousands of people participating to it, voluntary, so because they want to discover the hidden gems in London, we actually have the more or less ranking of urban scenes taken from Google Street View by beauty, by quietness, and by happiness. Now, all of a sudden, you can do all sorts of things, right? So you can extract, for example, visual features from the pictures, and you can say, which are the elements that do co-occur in beautiful images, in images that are considered beautiful in the city, and which are the elements that co-occur in negative parts of the city that are not considered beautiful, and also which are the elements where people don't agree, right? That's also something, so we know, pretty subjective, so that's something that might happen. And what we discover is, well, maybe obvious stuff, but so what Londoners, so why Londoners are happy? What makes them happy? Well, Victorian red brick houses and public gardens and greenery in general, right? Now, the interesting part, I'm putting it like a joke, and I apologize to my co-authors, but the interesting part here is that two examples are about a sort of socially embedded decision, like to say, okay, Victorian red brick houses, and they make me happy, only if I live in London, not if I were to live in Barcelona. But the other element, the greenery, is actually universal. So if you repeat this game in other city, you would find that as an element that is quite universal, that will make people happy. Oh, I was about to ask you that, but now you've got the answers. Which is the element that is worst possible in the cities, and we are planning for it, is cars, right? Right, but the really good thing is that you have a lot of data points, so you can look at outliers. So when cars are not are still considered beautiful, right? So you have urban scenes with cars and still beautiful. So what is it? Oh, so cars are not always bad if they are parked out of the way of pedestrians, and that's it. So if cars are not cars, then they're totally fine, right? So that's for you planners. So when you plan parking lot. Then the second worst element is isolated buildings, right? So isolated buildings, we've been known that Christopher Alexander spoke about that a lot, and he went to say as far as isolated buildings make people crazy. Right? Okay, then of course isolated buildings are not always bad. So if you look at outliers in the data, you look at two exceptions, usually are in London, specifically glass offices, and universally in all cities landmarks, right? So we know that it's quite obvious because landmarks are used for orienteering within the city. Okay, great. So when we started this project, we were after something that we called aesthetic capital, right? What makes London beautiful, right? And after a while, when we order, and in the paper you can find all the elements, negative and positive, what we found is that all the positive elements are actually not increasing aesthetic capital, like a beauty capital, if there is one such a thing, but they were increasing social capital. So all the elements that are positive increase the potential for social interactions, and all the elements that are negative decrease the potential for social interactions. So designing for sort of a happy city and retrofitting them is about understanding how people use the space and trying to build elements that potentially increase the social interactions. As simple as that. And that could be useful also for architects, right? But we work with architects, but ourselves we are not architects, we are a bunch of geeks, really. And then, so you should imagine this Google Street views as points on a map, right? And for these points on a map, we had a beauty score, a quiet score, a happy score. So what do you do with points on a map? Okay, let's make the joke. So what do geeks do with points on a map? They connect points, right? So that's what we do, really. So that's what we did, we connect points. And what you can do, and actually we built, and that was the TED Talk, MP Maps. So instead of giving you, we build new mapping tools, and instead of automatically giving you the shortest path from A to B, here is a UCL to Tech Modern, is going to give you the short path that is happy, the short path but beautiful, the short path that is quietest. So basically we are putting back what people would consider beautiful and happy back in a sort of simple mapping and automatic tool, as simple as that. All right, cool. So what we are doing is that we are basically putting layers, as some speakers would say here and said already. We are putting layers in terms of what people consider visually beautiful. But you know, when we did these experiments in London and Boston, people were enthusiastic about it. It's like, well, why companies don't build this stuff, right? So why do you give me always the shortest path? We wanted to say we are companies already, but we are the crazy branch of the company anyhow. So, and then we said, okay, sure, but it's really nice, they said, all of them, but there are a few things missing. And the three things missing in the mapping thing, in the mapping experiments, were smell, sound, and memories. And the interesting thing is that if you look at all the literature in smell and sound, it's all negative, right? So smell is equal to bad air quality, sound is equal to noise pollution, and that's it. And then we have all sorts of sensing devices that they'll focus on the negative parts of the city. And when we retrofit cities and we plan for cities, we always focus on the negative, right? So I was kind of surprised because I said, okay, why these participants are actually speaking about smell in a positive way? One guy said, I take the parallel road because there is a coffee shop when I go to the subway station and it wakes me up, the smell of it. One guy was saying, okay, when I go running, I synchronize with the church bells. So again, sound in a positive way, and we are totally overlooking it. We're not looking at it at all, right? And then there was memories, right? Personal memories. One guy said, I consider the street to be really, really nice for me because I gave my first kiss here. So that was a sort of personal memories. But also there are shared memories that we might relate to all of us, right? So like historical memories. So the way we perceive streets is quite complicated. And so we started with the list of things to do, right? And I'm going to show you just one project about smell, not about sounds and memories. Well, actually memories, we haven't done it yet, so if you have an idea, just speak to me. So, okay, so fine. So our study participants were 40 people, really in Boston and London, and said, smell is important. And then I went back to my team and said, well, let's look at smell. And so why smell is important? Well, if you were to look at your nose is a big data machine. You didn't know that. So you can say, you learned something. So basically, based on this science paper 2014, and the number is debated already always big, your nose can detect more than 1 trillion different kind of stimuli. Now, there are factory researchers that debate is 1 trillion, 1 billion, who knows, right? But it's always a big number. And the funny thing is that not only if you look at the literature of geeks like me, computer scientists, but even if you look at urban planning and actually the city council in London, how many people deal with smell? One guy, really. One guy for the whole city. And obviously they focus on bad odors, right? And why is that? So why we could actually smell 1 trillion different kinds of smells, and in urban planning, so when we deal with stuff, we just focus on a really tiny part of this gigantic pie. So why is that? Brainstorming number 2. Anyone? It's easy actually. I'm a very simple guy. Right, so because you can't measure it, right? So as simple as that. So what you can't measure, you cannot act upon, you cannot study. And well, of course, you have all sensing devices that will focus on the problems, nitrogen dioxide, for example. But you can't really measure things that are positive in terms of smell. And that's why Kate, for example, worked with us, and she does her PhD at the Royal College of Art. And again, her PhD, hear that, is about smell walks. So in the last 3 years, she's been going around the world, taking locals in different cities, and actually asking them to smell things. And of course, they would report on with pen and paper what they smelled, whether it was expected, pleasurable, and familiar. Those are the 3 factors important from a factory research. But the important thing is that basically she collected descriptors, keywords related to urban smells. So we took these 280 descriptors, and what did we do as geeks? There you go. So we built, basically, we matched them with picture tags. So So you take your pictures, you upload with some tags, right, on the internet, on Flickr, on Instagram, and then we basically took all the pictures that are on Flickr, and just imagine in the city of London there are 1 billion such. And then we filter away all the ones that were not related to smell, and we kept the ones related to smell. As simple as that. All right, so what geeks do when they have words and things, they put a graph, and then they count the number of times two words co-occur together. And if you were, so why would you do that? Because we had nothing to do, so we did that. But also, if you think about it, so there are 280 words, right? There's sort of, it's a list of words. So you don't have categories, subcategories, you can't describe, so you can't, so this is not even a syntax, it's not even a language, right? So it's really prehistory. So what you can do is that if you look at a co-occurrence graph, you can see that all nature words are related to each other, are close to each other in the graph, right? All the words related to food are close to each other and so on. Now all of a sudden, when you put order, you have a structure. So you have words, and then to each words associated categories and subcategories. So based on that, we built the first urban smell dictionary. So that's, I guess it's called the urban smell wheel. In the outer part, you have example words, and in the parts there are the subcategories and categories. Now, the really cool thing of this stuff is that, compared to sensing and other stuff, we don't only focus on the negative side of smell, but we can focus on the positive side. So we can celebrate smell for the first time. There you go. Okay, so now, you're saying, okay, this guy is crazy because he's saying he's doing Flickr and he's doing Instagram, and maybe he's like mapping only the east part of London where most of the hipsters are. Right, yeah, that might be, yes. But when I told you, so imagine London is 1 billion, right? So you don't need a really massive amount of tags. Actually, when we studied with some air quality data, you needed like 20, 30 tags for each street segment. And if you do that, well, you can validate the results whether they make sense or not with air quality data. I don't know if there is someone in the room from this institute, but we work with the Institute of Epidemiology in Barcelona and London. And they provide us with air quality data for each street segment. So now all of a sudden you can see when you have nature-related tags, is there air quality good or bad? When you have traffic emission-related tags, is good or bad? If the answer goes in the direction you expect, more or less you can say, well, this way of mapping makes more or less sense. Okay, so that's the correlation between nitrogen dioxide and the presence of traffic emission tags and presence of nature-related words. Those are the two categories in the wheel I showed you before, the mostly related with nitrogen dioxide. And of course, when you have nitrogen dioxide, you have a lot of traffic. When you have absence of or low levels of nitrogen dioxide, you have nature words, right? So the things actually work. Even if it is really highly biased, the data, to a certain extent, you can get a good picture of the smellscape of the city. And just to show you how the picture you can take, that's London, but on the site we have also Barcelona. So we look for all the tags related to traffic emission, and you can see and you can map that on London. Then you can look at the other categories, nature, right? In the wheel, we have 10 categories in total, and you can basically map the naturescape of the city of London. And you can do that for all sorts of categories, including food, right, which is another category of the city, and you can actually map the entire foodscape of the city. So we called the project Smell Maps. And if you can go see like .org and the projects on the smell maps, you can actually click even for Barcelona, there is the visualization where you can click on each road segment, actually street segment, and you can see the smell profile on the lower right-hand corner. And you can search for it, and if you live in central London, you would like to change place because it's all red, and red means traffic emissions. Stuff. Okay, so and just to take this research further and to conclude with my 20 minutes, we are doing exactly the same thing for sound, right? So sound has got the same problem. There is an overly focus on the negative, actually exclusive focus on the negative side, on decibel levels, and we are building through a platform a new dictionary where you have categories and subcategories of sounds, and also positive sounds are represented, including children as human sounds are positive. Okay, great. So the other thing that you can do, which is quite nice, is that not only you can map, you say, sound and smell, but you can map high-order categories like, is this area predicted to be calm, right? Is this area predicted to be active, right? Based on sound and smell and other sensory perceptions. And that's what we did in this map of London. You know, in terms of sound, for example, you know which areas tend to be chaotic, calm, monotonous, and exciting. The interesting thing is that if you look in the literature of olfactory research, I'm going to tell you something that we discovered only by looking at Barcelona, not in London, is that for olfactory research, the monotonic sound is actually something really negative, right? It's sort of monotonous. But if you look at the map of Barcelona, guess what? You have the monotonous sound. You have that on the page, right? So now all the oral researchers are looking back to their classification of positive and negative and looking at what kind of activities you actually have for certain soundscapes. So that's an interesting thing that came out from our study, but the idea is really simple. So you have multiple layers. Now we have 11 cities for smell, sound, visuals. We are adding sounds, and who knows what we're going to add next, possibly based on some of the collaboration I might find today. And if you're if you're interested more in this stuff in the future, well then have a look at a good city like log, and I really thank you very much to the organizer for inviting me and for you, for listening to such a presentation.